YouTube hates me. I do not understand what is so complicated about just getting one live video together. What is so hard about this? Hopefully Christian can get in. Hallelujah. We got Christian. Oh my God, YouTube hates me. I do not understand, dude. This is insane. Like, all right, when we start, there's a little thing on the side that says vertical orientation or horizontal orientation. And I literally go out of my way to toggle it just so that it goes off of vertical so I can put it back on vertical and make sure that it knows that it's vertical orientation. And it still won't let it happen. This thing is insane. Like, literally does not like me. I don't understand. I don't know what's going on.
Are people able to see us?
I don't know. We still got 0 people in thing. Angelique, can Angelique get in?
Let's see.
So she's gonna try.
All right. We got one person in chat, or we got one person in the thing. Welcome aboard, everybody. Thank goodness we have finally got this thing going.
We've got some technical difficulties, as is a 2025 problems.
Oh, never mind, they're gone. I hope people can get in. It might just be like a thing where it says they're waiting and then they leave.
Oh no. Now it says live with a red thing. So yeah, we're good now. All right, cool.
Good to go? All right. Woo! Is Angela in? Because I don't see her.
She's watching on our TV.
Oh. Yeah, I don't see her. It's kind of, I would have thought that we would have seen. Maybe not.
Are we still on there, honey? Are you watching?
Hey, I see her now. Hi.
Yes, there you go.
We have our first chat of the night. All right. Whew. Welcome back to Common Mansplaining. I'm Eddie. That's Christian. And finally, we were able to do a live session. Holy cow. Sorry about the wait, guys. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I know nobody's in chat yet, but we are going to discuss some government corruption today because that was fun. All right. Yeah. So let's start back where we were before. So basically, yeah. So DOGE has uncovered a lot of corruption, a lot of fraud, a lot of underhanded dealings at USAID. And the first thing to say about this is that it isn't much of the government's overall expenditures, right? It's like a small percentage, but despite the fact that it's only 1% or so, it is still reflective of how the government basically does this everywhere. And so, whereas people might write this off as like saying, oh, DOGE is only a small percentage. No, this is just how government operates. And they didn't want us seeing any part of it because the moment we stumble on something that indicates how the government operates, we'll know that this is the kind of corruption that happens everywhere.
Well, there was zero scrutiny. So it allowed that if somebody was being honest, they could be honest. But if somebody was being negative, right, that the Treasury Department had been told to just whatever it requests them to just pay it. So right. You got 1.4 billion payment requests, right? They did zero scrutiny on checks. Is this supposed to go out and just send it out? And nobody's auditing this really. So they found some really nefarious stuff, and because of that, so USAID was created by executive order. Trump has 100% executive authority to shut it completely down.
Yep.
He put a 90-day pause on any payments going out.
Right.
And any payments that go out before then have to be personally authorized by Marco Rubio. Right. So that's a much higher standard than don't even bother looking to the head of the Department of State as to personally approve every payment.
And I want to clarify something too, because this is something everybody seems to go off in la la land about on the left-wing media. Elon Musk didn't shut USAID down. Elon Musk did nothing to USAID. All he did was look at it. His team looked at USAID. Trump shut USAID down. And actually, even Trump didn't shut USAID down. What he did was just stop funding it. USAID was really the one that stopped USAID. They're the ones that told people abroad that they're locked out of their accounts and then they're going to have to, bring them back when they get a chance. That wasn't Trump. That wasn't Elon Musk. That was USAID doing that.
Yeah. So Elon's entire team of auditors, again, read-only access. They are Treasury employees. They've been vetted. They've been interviewed, hired. All they're doing is reading this stuff. Gave enough reports that started coming out that Trump right, saw that there was enough there to freeze all payments for 90 days. And as he's read more, he has officially laid off 10, all but 294 USAID employees.
Right.
So it's around 10,000 that are for sure chopping block. And I think the plan is unless Marco Rubio saves the department with a tiger team for very specific purposes, I would not be surprised to see it completely go away.
Right. And, the thing is like, to use Elon Musk's words himself, it's one thing if you stumble on an apple with a worm in it, right? Or maybe even 2 worms or 3 worms. But Elon Musk rolls up on this thing, and this is just a bowl of worms, right? With like a couple of moldy pieces of apple left. This isn't like an apple that can be fixed. You just take the worm out. No, this is like nothing but. I mean, do you mind if I read some of the stuff that they were doing? All right. So this blows my mind, right? Let's start with the fact that there's $17 billion that gets siphoned to Ukraine that is separate above and beyond all of the other stuff that you see in the news that was approved by Congress, right? This is 17 extra billion dollars that's just going to Ukraine. And a lot of the stuff that they're sending to Ukraine is like, they sent 65 million condoms. They sent personalized birth control, IUDs. Who needs this junk in Ukraine? What is that even for? They're at war. What on earth are they? How are they going to be worried about? A lot of this money, like $1.5 billion of this, went to Latin America, like Colombia and Guatemala and the Caribbean, because we're funding transgender like activism, right? There's like, $50,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. There's like $32,000 for a comic book in Peru, a transgender comic book. I mean,
they've been forcing countries to have DEI curriculum, or they wouldn't, and these type of LGBT push that agenda, or they wouldn't get any USAID. And so that's what these countries were forced to do.
And it gets worse. It gets worse. All right, I'm saving the best for last here. Like, okay, $2 million in Guatemala to fund sex changes and LGBT. All right, here's where it gets really fun, right? All right, hundreds of millions of dollars sent to Afghanistan to fund heroin manufacturing, right? Like, okay, hold on. $70,000 to a DEI musical in Ireland. $8 million of this money is siphoned through various agencies back into Politico, which is like the most left-wing like media outlet that you can have. So literally, my taxpayer money as a conservative is funding propaganda for the opposition.
Well, yeah, they would carry the most water for Biden, and overlook his obvious faults and not turn a blind eye to his scandals. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're even funding terrorists through like these shell companies. Like, this drives me nuts. We are literally funding enemies of the state.
Yeah.
With the state, with my money. And again, people might say, this is small amount. Like, this is not small money. This is billions and billions of dollars. This is good money.
So I've had some friends who have worked in, I've been government employees up there, and even had one of my sister's very good friends who worked for the State Department. And while this is getting mainstream media attention now, the fact that USAID does a bunch of bizarre stuff has been a thorn in the side of the State Department for a long time. That they would do stuff that was counterintuitive what the Department of State wanted to do. That they thought they were a charitable organization and could do whatever they wanted to, especially deep state. If a Republican Department of State was trying to achieve a certain end in a country, they had no problem, in fact, gleefully like to undermine that by
all day long.
And there was nobody to stop the payments.
All day long. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what drives me nuts. Okay. I get that this is a big win for the right. I do get that. I'm definitely not like sleeping. I get that this is a huge win for the right and the left wing isn't going to like this, but you would think that when there's a shared victory that we could all just bask in that, right? And I cannot see even if you liked this stuff, like even if you were someone who was like in favor of transgender movement, even if you were someone who liked DEI, you should still be opposed to taxpayer money getting siphoned out for stuff like this that has no bearing on the state, right? Like this should be a win for everybody. This should be like a no-brainer. We all just look at it and say, wow, that's a lot of corruption. Let's try. And this is, I think maybe this leads into something you wanted to talk about a little bit too, which is instead of the role for the Democrats in this point shouldn't be to like try to stifle every single thing that the Republicans do. The role should be to try to claim the small victories when they can. The role should be like you look at USAID, you say, wow, that is a lot of corruption. Good job finding it. Can we save this one program or something like that? Because this program is really valuable and is good for the
Find
state.
the honest ones among the corruption. Yeah, the
And then that would be the easiest way for number one, for the country to come back together. Number two, for the Democrats to still find a small victory and to maybe even regain touch with the citizens of America. And three, it wouldn't be like they're trying to stop corrupt. I don't understand how you can be on the side of this kind of corruption. I just don't get it.
So a couple things, yeah. There was a CNN panel that's kind of going viral. A Republican who said that the Democrats right now are in their knee-jerk opposition to anything the Trump administration is doing. They're setting themselves up where obviously this corruption, finding this corruption, what Elon's doing, has like 80% approval rating. Everybody is in favor of it, and 20% are against it. And the Democrats are on the 20% side, right? And like women and transgender men in women's sports, 20% of people in favor of that, 80% against it. And in all these ways, the Democrats, in their zeal to oppose Donald Trump, are taking let's just say the bad political positions.
Yeah, because super unpopular.
If you want to be popular and gain power legitimately through popular elections, you're going to have to find ways to appeal to a broad, and they're sort of leaderless in the wilderness. Now, one of the things too that really bothered me about these revelations is that, and not just Politico, but the funding of foreign media, right? BBC.
Yep.
Right. Any the New York Times, other stuff like that, and so obviously that's got to stop. But the funding of these immigrant these organizations that supposedly supply services to illegal immigrants, not just to help them. The Lutheran charities were the big one to help them come into the U.S. Big money, and they found that those were led by Michelle Obama's chief of staff, Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. Why she was able to get so much money and nobody scrutinized it, right? She knew the connections, she knew the people. Yeah. And then there's supposedly a Catholic charity in Ireland that's been resettling thousands and thousands of Arabs in Ireland with some opposition. Now that USA is cut off, they said, "Oh, that's like a 100% of the budget. They're ceasing all operations." And we had no idea on that.
Right, because it has nothing to do with us. Right, because it has nothing to do with us whatsoever. And I can't say this enough. I truly do love every single person on earth. I really do. There's not a peoples that I don't like. There's not an ethnicity that I don't like. There's not a color of skin I don't like. I love everybody. But if I'm in America and I'm paying taxes to America, then I want America to take care of America. That's it. And if you want to be, I'm sorry, this really does upset me.
The type of stuff that I was expecting, like the stuff I could explain would be like, all right, so maybe I'm not as on board to Ukraine, or some people aren't on board to Ukraine, but a lot of people fled Ukraine. A lot of people had refugees. And maybe, all right, so these services were helping Ukrainian refugees go to Europe, come to America, go to Canada, go wherever, Australia. Like, this is a legitimate war. They're being invaded by somebody else. But no, it's like there's somebody in Turkey Turkey who thinks their life would be better off if they were in Germany or Ireland or something, and they're just like picking them up and moving them.
Yeah. Or there's someone in like Cuba who thinks their life would be better off as a woman instead of a man, and I'm like, what? And I mean,
yeah. So the propaganda too, and then it obviously coming out of the farthest left wing administration that we've ever had.
yep.
Right. This is Biden ran as a centrist, but when he was so incompetent, his staff recognized he wasn't going to be able to push back, and that they could run the government like the far left wing, the San Francisco wing of the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And this is we're exposing the extent of that. So if the Democrats, right? So the opposition party in Europe, like in has a particular kind of role because here we can have divided government. Like the Democrats could occupy have a majority in one of the houses of Congress, and so we have to have some consensus. In Europe, when you win an election, like you get everything. The opposition party sets up what's called a shadow government, and says like this is what we would do in each of these roles, but they're essentially blocked out of doing anything.
Right.
That's the role that currently Democrats are in because of Trump's really resounding victory. And so the role they should do is not just be knee-jerk whiners, but how can they find middle ground positions that will be popular? And not that I need to be a consultant for the Democratic Party, but right now they're just, they're just saying no to things that are obviously great. Wonderful.
Guys, if you're just joining us, say hi in chat. We'd love to hear from you. I know that Christian talks for a long time. I was trying to get back to you guys on that. But we're talking about Doge. We're talking about the corruption that they've uncovered in USAID. So if you guys have something to say on it, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get some comments, some questions, field some stuff from the peanut gallery. This stuff just it's an amazing, and it drives me nuts how they vilify Elon Musk. Like literally, this is a guy who he's already running like $6 billion companies and somehow like managing all of them. And on top of that, he's volunteered his time to go help the government be more efficient.
He is a government employee. He is not paid. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's insane. Like that's insane that someone would even do that. And like and meanwhile, they're trying to turn him into a demon, and he has been the only thing he's done his whole life is give us cleaner energy vehicles, tried to make us a multi-planetary species. Oh God, what a horrible person! Like
other satellite internet.
Yeah, put internet in basically every country. He's created I don't know how many jobs. Like, yeah, what a bad guy, right? And literally nobody cared who he was until like 4 years ago. So, guys, if y'all are out there and you don't like Elon Musk, I really think you should do some deep introspection and figure out why all of a sudden 4 years ago he became a problem in your mind, because I guarantee you it was probably left-wing propaganda. It was like you got on TV and they told you that Elon Musk was bad, and you're like, oh, I guess he's bad. And you got it. You for those of you out there who are that susceptible to that kind of messaging, you have got to fact check. You've got to go. First of all, you have to realize that everybody's got stuff, right? Like nobody's perfect. So if you are expecting.
And here's the thing too, I think that people need to know, it's not like Elon is personally framing this. He's unleashed AI, right? So AI is a new thing. We couldn't do this audit 4 years ago in Trump's 2016, right? And so Trump would have loved to have disassembled a corrupt institution like that, but didn't have the means to uncover it, right? He was a little inexperienced. Plus the technology wasn't there. So, right. So what Elon's done with this guy is it's read-only access, is unleash something to uncover, right? Like something decipherable, something that wants to be hidden. And the American people, right? Truth, a democracy dies in darkness, to quote a thing. We need that to be light, and then we need to see, all right, how are our politicians, how are our leaders going to stand up to this? Because corruption should never be tolerated by either party. And it needs to be owned up. Right now, they need to say we support this. This needs to be cleaned out, and not just yelling at the messenger. Hey, messenger.
Exactly. Right. And it's like, and you can tell that they're reaching, right? Like, this is, I talked to a friend the other day about this thing, and he's like, I can't believe they let so many young kids in there. And I'm like, really? That's your objection? Is their age? Like, come on, guys. Like, you have to, this is how it's easy to see this propaganda. If you just know the tricks, right? If you just know simple tricks, like if the objection seems like it doesn't actually directly relate to the problem, right? Like, for example, age in the abstract doesn't make you any less or more qualified for the item that you would be performing. Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. Sometimes age is, being youth is better. Like, I had a sharper mind when I was in high school.
Decide if they want to change their gender.
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah. Like, this is the same people that have no. Sorry, I'm talking over you. My bad. I didn't hear what you said.
Just that. Yeah, their arguments were like on the left, a 13-year-old is fully aware to make all kinds of decisions about their to do the permanent, whether they want to mutilate themselves, all this kind of stuff like that. So they think 13-year-olds are full-grown adults. They should have no problem with 21 to 25-year-olds. These are
right. And yeah, like you said, this is read access. This is not like a bunch of guys like copying 20,000 social security numbers. Not that people don't have access to social. This is the other thing that bothers me too. They're so terrified about the quote unquote private information that's on there. They're not auditing people. They're auditing the government. They're auditing USAID.
NGOs, yeah.
NGOs, right? And not only that, even if they were, like, this is the same side who literally begged for TikTok to allow China to spy on them. So, like, they're obviously not worried about private information, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways. You can't just say, oh, I love my private information, nobody should have access to it. And then a couple days later, when someone tries to access not your private information, you whine about it. It's like, what? This is so far. It's too many levels of abstraction away from logic that I can't even wrap my head around it. Like,
supposedly in December, the Biden administration gave China access to White House computer systems. I don't know why. We'll find out more about that when Patel finally gets confirmed. But yeah, I mean the level that this was operated for, right? People are calling it money laundering because it was a way to maybe take illicit funds and once you were getting USAID, because it seems like a lot of these funds or charities were getting hundreds of millions or billions of dollars from the U.S. and not turning around and doing very much with that, basically spending it on themselves. And so that's why now, if you are a legitimate, NGO operator, and you want and your cause helps the U.S., then you got nothing to worry about. Marco Rubio's gonna stand with you, But if you've been using this as a slush fund and you put a bunch of woke gender gobbledygook into things so that you can say, oh yeah, $2 million is going to Guatemala, but really it's going to your buddy who's going to send you 1.9 million to your offshore, Bahamas account.
Here's a question I have for you. So one of the things that people are challenging, right, is they're saying that this whole thing is illegal, that Trump doesn't have access and that he shouldn't be able to. Now, I have to challenge that because I just cannot fathom how the president of the United States wouldn't have the executive power to freeze expenditures for the time being, right? Like, maybe not permanently, right? Maybe he can't just shut everything down permanently. But what if we get in a war or something and he has to reallocate funds temporarily? Like, the president has to be able to have that power. Now, for better or worse, but I think that's just something that we have to have, because what if there's an emergency and Congress just cannot respond quickly enough? Like, what if there's a deadlock or something? Sometimes you just have to be able to pull the trigger right away. Now, don't get me wrong. I think maybe in the long run, Trump might need to substantiate this through congressional action. But for the short term, I think there's no problem with Trump just saying, like, everything stops for 90 days or whatever, 60 days, something like that, until we can get a handle on it. And then we can reallocate as we find out which programs are actually worthwhile. And that's the thing. Like, yeah, I'm sure USAID has some good programs, right? I'm sure that it does good work around the world, and otherwise it wouldn't exist, right? The trick of shell companies is like they have to have something that they do to show that they're valuable. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to like be used as corruption and slush funds and stuff like that. So for the good stuff that USAID is doing, I'm sure all of that's going to come right back. It's just we have to know which ones are good first. We have to know which ones are the worms and which
they
ones
have
aren't.
no credibility or trust. And so everybody, if you want to check from us, you're going to have to lay out your business plan and your past results, and we're going to have to buy it.
Yep, KPI, baby. Let's figure out who's actually accomplishing what they want. To switch gears a little bit, what do you think about Trump taking over Gaza? Look, you can tell that this is a real estate guy because it's like every time a piece of land opens up, he's like, "Ooh, I want that." It's like playing Monopoly in real life.
I want to cut to that first. First, I just want to comment one more last thing about Trump.
Sure.
The president of the United States has to have the power to remake the executive branch, or he's just a figurehead, right? And the one part of the executive branch that is, and it's more custom, that is he's supposed to appoint attorney general and then not interfere with the Justice Department because it's a quasi sort of separation of powers because you don't want the Justice Department to have to go over to the judiciary. Right. So he appoints the AG, tells him generally kind of what his priorities are, and then it's more hands off. But everything else, the president has to be able to administer that and be able to remake it, or else, he's just somebody that shows up in public events and opens supermarkets while the deep state does everything. And that might be what you want, but that's not what the Constitution wants. So I think he's on very solid ground as far as his constitutional rights here. All right.
Now, the one thing I will say is the one thing that comes close, right? The only thing that I would challenge me personally is I would like to see all of our treaties, if we have them, lived up to, right? Like if we've got obligations
validated in the Senate.
Right. But I do think that we should fulfill our obligations. Like if we promise somebody we're going to do this for you, then we should do that for them. Now, it gets different if it's like an illegal obligation, right? If we say we're going to do something but we're not actually allowed to, then that's a little bit different. But if for some of these things it's like if we just tell Ukraine we're going to give you $17 billion, then I guess we're stuck. Now we don't have to do any after that, right? And we probably shouldn't. But I do feel like we should fulfill our obligations if we have a treaty in place.
At least right now nobody's clawing back money. It's just exposing it and stopping it in new money falling after bad, right? So, all right. So, on to Gaza. So, those that watch Common Mansplaining closely, and we love you for it.
Yes, thank you.
Common Mansplaining.
By the way, real quick, like, share, and subscribes. We love you guys, and put some comments in the chat.
Yes.
All right.
So, those that watch Common Mansplaining, we had a discussion about Gaza with an NGO that provides humanitarian services in the Middle East.
Yes.
And one of Common Mansplaining's potential things floated was to take a piece of real estate nearby that is unoccupied, uninhabited. There's a stretch of the Red Sea in Sudan, just below the Egyptian border, nobody lives in, that can be developed with all this money that the Palestinians are going to get to rebuild. We're going to build them a paradise. And this is, I think, Trump said, like, hey, just build them new stuff somewhere else. They go there and have Gaza, instead of being controlled by the Jews, which everybody hates, have it be controlled by the U.S., make it a territory of the U.S. And we'll bring law and order there. There will be no terrorism in Gaza. And it'll be a beautiful place. People can come there and enjoy the nice weather.
Yeah, it'll be the Riviera, right? Let me ask you this now. Do you really think that we can just stop terrorism like that in the Gaza Strip cold? Because I get the sense that if we take it over, there will be like this low level tension all the time. There'll be like
Oh,
these low level.
there'll be insurgencies, but the insurgencies now are right. Their objection is they don't like being ruled by Jews, ostensibly. If they're
Usually,
ruled
but
by the
they don't really
U.S.,
like they don't like America either.
yeah.
I mean, we definitely represent, we definitely represent the opposing viewpoint. The I guess the age of reason. I don't know. I don't know what it is about America that we don't like. I mean, we're definitely imperialists, so there's that,
Yeah. So maybe it will be more objectionable, and maybe that's his strategy. He comes in and says, "Look, you got an option. You can become my subject. You can become subject to the American government, and if they're so opposed to that, then all of a sudden, whatever type of Israeli solutions might be more palpable to them." But whatever
Yeah,
it is, Hamas is going to have to lose the ability to make war. That was
yeah,
the
I do.
big thing, that Israel tried to respect that Hamas was just going to be a peaceful governing organization, right? There was an attack made by Syria and Lebanon and coordinated by Iran earlier in 2023.
Yep.
And they wanted Hamas to rise up too. Hamas said, no, we're not taking part. And Israel noticed that and really appreciated it and said, oh, Hamas is, and it seemed like Hamas was more focused on their problems, like giving power to be reliable to their streets and policing normal citizen crime and working with these humanitarian things to actually improve the lives of their citizens. And Israel was like, okay, maybe Hamas isn't just knee-jerk radical. And what they did was, they talk about how Hamas feels so trapped in their open-air prison with these guards all around them. Is Israel pulled back their guards, right? They weren't watching them like hawks. They had a skeleton crew in all of their military bases, basically be somebody there to just keep them from burning down. Who could, no military force on that day, and Hamas saw this draw away, saw that Israel was giving them some rope and say, okay, if you want to be peaceful, we're here. We're not going to be here oppressing you.
I lost Christian for a moment. I don't know what happened. Maybe I don't know. Hopefully his phone didn't die on him or something like that. But anyway, yeah. To finish his sentence, basically, yeah, that is what happened. So historically, there was, when Hamas didn't engage in 2023, Israel did give them a little more leash, and so when they got more leash, of course, they turned around first thing and bit Israel on October 7th, which is unfortunate. But I do think that there's some benefits and some penalties to Trump's annexation of Gaza, and I'm still not even clear if Trump actually wants to do that. I'm not sure if that's what he's doing. I mean, he's declared that he's he said there's not going to be any Marines, nobody's boots on the ground in Gaza. He's also said that he's not going to, that America is not going to pay for it, right? The restructuring, the reconstruction of Gaza. He says that America is not going to have any part in that. We just manage it, I guess. And so he wants, I guess, the surrounding territories, Israel or Egypt or Jordan or something, to all pitch in to restructure Gaza and rebuild it. And then, after that, I don't even know what his plans are. If Trump actually wants to own it, I don't know if he wants America to have it, or if he wants to give it back to Gaza. I'm kind of confused. Yeah. So Christian's phone died, so I figured he'll be back in a second. But yeah, but yeah. So I have no idea what Trump's actual plans are. It's one of those things where I thought it surprised everyone. I mean, if you guys watch the clip where Trump announced it, even Netanyahu is like looking over at him like, huh? It's like out of nowhere. I think nobody saw it coming. I think he literally made policy the second he said something, which is insane. I mean, what president does that, right? Nobody knows what's going on. He's like, oh, by the way, we're taking Gaza. Oh yeah. Christian will be right back, guys. For those of you who miss him, and for those of you who don't, I'll just keep on droning on. Now, what is sure to happen if America takes Gaza is the war will end, right? Because obviously, Israel's not going to be dropping bombs on American sovereign territory, obviously. Now, as far as where the Palestinians go, that's a really weird, I don't know what Trump has in mind. Maybe he's just going to like threaten people with tariffs until they until they finally succumb and say, all right, we'll take some Palestinians over here. But there is that uninhabited zone near the Red Sea, which is a relatively lush area to live by. So I don't know. For me, I've always felt like Gaza and the West Bank should be one contiguous state, one contiguous nation. I don't know why it was separated to begin with, but that's just kind of how the cookies crumbled when Israel was purchasing land, before and during the Zionist movement. But yeah, so Gaza's crazy. Gaza's crazy. I really kind of want if anybody out there has some comments or wants to say hello. I'm feeling a little bit lonely. Angelique, I appreciate Angelique for helping out. She's the only one that's been talking to us, but the rest of you are definitely welcome to say hi. So yeah, I finished your point for you, and
Well, and I think whatever solution is going to happen, it's not going to be one that the Palestinians are going to love, right?
Right.
So they're not going to be like they're not going to be parading in the streets with joy at the thing, and so there are going to be some hard things, but the goal is peace. And I think Saudi Arabia wants to have normalized relations with Israel. They realize Israel's here to stay. Israel is a rational, modern government that they can do business with and live peaceably next to, and they want to do that. I think Jordan wants to do that too.
Yeah, but do they want it? Do they want it bad enough to take on the Palestinians? That's the real question. Because, like I was saying earlier, when you dipped out for a second, I mean, nobody's wanting to take them in, right? Like nobody. They've been offered many times, right? We've said, hey, Egypt, don't you want some Gazans? Jordan, don't you want some Gazans? They're like, no. We tried this before and it didn't work out. Now, I mean, I think that your idea about the Red Sea, being that little strip there, I think that would be a great place, but. Maybe you slice off Gaza and you expand the West Bank a little bit to incorporate the new populace, and that way they're all one contiguous state. At least they're all together. They may be happy with that, but either way, I think we need to get them some infrastructure because they can't be reliant on Israel for all their stuff. Because while they're relying on Israel, they're always going to claim that kind of oppression. Oh my God, did we lose you again? Well, Christian, I'll tell you what. Today we have been fraught with technological difficulties. But who's got a question for me? Who's got a comment? I'll start fielding comments. I'll start fielding questions while Christian is away. What else do you guys want to talk about? That's all I had for you guys today. Really was Gaza and USAID corruption. I hope that Elon Musk keeps doing what he's doing. I hope that he keeps on finding all of the fraudulent and wasteful money in every single government organization. He's working on Department of Education right now, and all the Democrats met him at that place and tried to get in, and there was like a bodyguard standing out front, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think that Gaza was a wholly unexpected decision by President Trump, and now we're all stuck like scrambling, trying to figure out what exactly is going to happen over there. Now, one thing that I've noted is in the media, they call that ethnic cleansing, right? Like, for some reason, I don't buy it. Right now, hey, who is this? Jared, yay! We finally got somebody to say hello. How's it going, Jared? Thanks for popping in. Appreciate it. Yeah, for the media propaganda that I get for Gaza and the ethnic cleansing nonsense, I just don't buy it, right? Like whenever somebody says ethnic cleansing, what we think of is like Rain of Tears stuff. We think of like really, really, really bad, like chattel driving or like a genocide, something really bad. But that's not what's going on here. We're instead of like driving somebody through a harsh landscape, we're like, here, we're gonna build you something new. So I don't think I don't buy this whole ethnic cleansing propaganda line. I think that's BS. I think that's more garbage just to try to make Trump look bad. And in reality, it's just now we're gonna create peace where there alternatively wasn't any other way to do it. And I think that's true. I think that there was really no other way that Gaza and Israel would have stopped fighting for a long time.
I really think that Middle Eastern culture respects strength to a degree that we don't really appreciate, and is really going to need to have like threats of annihilation is the only thing they're going to respect. And then like, okay. We're really trying to offer them options that would be acceptable to us culturally, but they're so different. Like their culture is so different that it's not about appealing to what we would accept or what we would want. It's got to, or what we would respect.
Yeah, let me. So, City of Solitude says, yeah, forceful relocation is considered ethnic cleansing technically by the UN. Yeah, and you're probably right. And that's why I mentioned it. The problem is, though, is it's the connotation, right? So when people say the word ethnic cleansing, it's kind of like when people say the word genocide and they refer to Israel and they call it a genocide, right? It's not actually really what a genocide is, right? It may fit somebody's definition somewhere in some dossier, maybe, but it really isn't what people really think when they hear those words. Like when I hear genocide, I'm thinking like Holocaust, like literally the extermination of a race. When I hear ethnic cleansing, I'm thinking like Rain of Tears stuff. Like I'm thinking like really bad. But in reality, the alternative here is that they continue to get blown up by Israel ad nauseum, right? Because Israel's not going to run out of munitions. Yeah. And so we're trying to create a situation where there isn't that constant tension. And I think it's one thing like, all right, if someone forced me out of my house today, yeah, I would be upset. But if somebody forced me out of my house today and said, well, we're actually moving you over here and we're giving you a mansion and a Lamborghini, I'd be like, hey, my man, appreciate you. You know, like that's how it goes, right? This can go a lot of different ways. And I'm hoping it's closer to the second.
Well, I was going to say, the Gaza is technically a refugee camp.
Yeah.
They're already pushed off their land or whatever. So we're giving them a better camp, better refugee camp. And then they can appeal if they want. And when Gaza gets wiped out, Israel is not going to occupy Gaza. They know that's too far. So if they relocate everybody out and Israel comes in, that is ethnic cleansing. But if they relocate everybody out of Gaza and it becomes a nature preserve, or Trump or the U.S. manages it, and it becomes just a tourism hub that anybody can come visit, even these Gazans, if they want to come visit, right, they can, or if they want to come work in the hospitality industry, there they can, but that they're not going to be governed by Hamas. That's something, and it's not going to be a refugee camp anymore. If you want a refugee camp, let's build you a better one in Turkey or Syria or Sudan, right? Some places unoccupied. Nobody, especially I like the Sudan option because nobody else wants that land. Right. Nobody is going to be sad about it. So, and we have the technology and the terraforming to make it work.
Yeah, but well, what my thing would be, so if I'm putting on my Palestinian hat, right? Like if I'm putting on and I'm trying to look through their eyes. I mean, I wouldn't want to move, right? I get that. Like I would want that zone to remain mine. Now, I don't know how attached I would be. Like if someone said, why don't you just move to the West Bank? I don't know if I would mind that too much as long as it's provided for me. But yeah, right. That's a good point.
They will have voluntary migration. Who wants to leave?
Yeah,
right?
Raise your hand. And who wants to stay and get bombed by Israel? Anybody?
No live in this hellscape that we're not going to let you really rebuild the way you want to, right? And you're still going to have all these restrictions.
If Trump is going to build it up, though, right? If he's going to reconstruct that zone, why can't the Gazans return?
Well, so it would be the same deal. Like if Gazans want to live peacefully in Israel, they have to declare that Israel has a right to exist as a real country. And it's kind of doing the same thing, right? To come and live in Gaza if Trump rebuilds it and it's his palatial place, you want to live there, you want to work in the hotel industry or the hospitality industry or whatever, you're going to have to be able to say, I want to live in peace and at least sign Israel is a legitimate country that has a right to exist, and I'm not going to try to drive every Jew or Israelite into the ocean.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, it would be nice if it's like if it turns into some kind of um, like a I don't know a good name for it. Like a place where both of them can coexist together. And anybody can use that zone, like kind of like a international like demilitarized zone, but like basically anybody can go in and hang out, and like it's like is the Jews can go in, the Arabs can go in, everybody's happy. Like I don't know if that'll ever work, but
about Gibraltar, it reminds me of Gibraltar. Right,
exactly. Like
anybody can go in. When Britain was part of the EU, any Spaniard can go into Gibraltar, right? And then go over, but they still hate that the English occupied Gibraltar. They hate it, right? And the English are like, sorry, it's just too strategic. We have to have this base here so that our ships can get into the Mediterranean. We're always going to occupy it, right? And you can come here. We're not denying Spaniards that can come visit, right? But we're going to keep it as a military base, and the access doesn't make them hate it any less.
Right.
But they realize they're not ready to start a war with a stronger party. They at least realize Britain's army is stronger, and they would lose, and so they don't do it. The Gazans don't have that same sort of rationale. They realize they will lose any fight with Israel, and they will still, when led by Hamas,
fight anyway.
Do stupid military.
I mean, honestly, this is just me. I think they should rout Hamas. I think they should find him in Qatar and then put them all in international prison or whatever it is. Like we can send them down to Nicaragua. There's a dude that's did you hear about that? The guy that's like selling prison space?
Yeah,
El Salvador. Yeah, that's what I meant. El Salvador. They sell in prison space. That's insane. Like, that's a great place for Hamas. Like if you guys want to start international ruckus for no reason, like that's where you go. We should actually, there should be an international community zone for like war criminals anyway. Like, like I don't know. That's just me. But I've always wanted
Northwest Australia sounds good because nobody wants to live there. All the crocodiles. You can have 40-foot crocodiles.
Oh boy. But anyway, that was all I had for the day. Anyway, you got anything else?
Well, I mean, in general, right? So I guess the role of the opposition. I want to get back to this. I think is to try to. It's the moral question for me. Is to try to be rid themselves of corruption, try to live out of corruption, and then be on the lookout for if the ruling party, which is the Republicans, if they become corrupt, then they'll be able to point it out, right?
Right.
Now, if they don't cleanse themselves from corruption, the Republicans are going to still be able to say, "Hey, you're still corrupt," right? So Democrats first have to look inside and root out any of their corruption. Then they can be a good sounding board for when the Republicans ever become corrupt or start abandoning the principles of American people. And then the Democrats can offer a viable alternative. Hey, we're here. We won't do that to you. That I see that as the righteous way back. Not using subterfuge, not using graft, not trying to rig elections.
Yep,
but just to become uncorrupt and build back credibility so that people, and then to a point where you hold the Republicans accountable. I hope the Republicans won't fall into corruption, but it's been really hard whenever they're in power to
that's just the nature of things, right? Like
the urges of using all that money.
Yeah, just like when the Democrats started, their Biden's pardon streak, right, where he started pardoning every single person on earth except for me, I guess. But like
1,000 people.
Yeah, and see, this is the thing, right? The Democrats for years and years and years had been touting this moral high ground. They'd be like, "Look, we respect the rule of law. We would never do something like that." And Trump hadn't even done it. It was just a hypothetical on the table. They're like, "What if Trump does this?" They're like, "Well, we would never do that because we're above that." And it's like a couple years later, it's like, like if you want that moral high ground back, you've got to cleanse yourself. You've got to get yourself back to the point where you're not doing stuff like that, where you do respect the rule of law, where you're not allowing people to go run through the campuses and like, you know, damaging stuff and kill and hurting people and while they're protesting for, you know, anti-American stuff, you know, like you got to get yourself to the point where all that's gone. Then when the Republicans screw up, and that's inevitable, right? Like, let's be honest, there'll be another Matt Gaetz or another, you know, something like that. And then you can be like, see, and then you can maybe retake some offices. But also, like, in the meantime, the goal shouldn't be to just slow everything down. That shouldn't be your goal, because you still should, in my opinion, you should still respect the will of the people. The will of the people have spoken, and this is what they want, right? They're whining about Doge, for example, and it's not like Trump didn't campaign the entire time saying, if I'm elected, Elon Musk is going to run Doge. He's going to clean house. He's going to find every wasteful blah, 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 blah. And then he gets elected. So now that it happens, it's like, you know what it is all the other presidents in the past just like bluff their way through office, right? But Trump like says, I'm going to do this thing. And then he does it. He writes an executive order and they're like, what? You're like, what? I don't understand. How's it? But that's all it is. That's the secret sauce, is like, you say you're going to do something and then you do it.
Well, here's the thing for longtime leftist Democrats who've been living in a bubble. Maybe that's the thing. In Brooklyn, you're in a bubble. You don't encounter anyone on the right. Maybe they weren't fully informed. They weren't watching Trump's rallies. They weren't fully informed of this because they were never considering Trump as a person they would vote for. So they never took any time to listen to any of his plans or policies or anything like that, and just said, he's a Nazi. He's not worth my time, right? So with USAID, with some of this corruption coming out, especially as you see like money going to institutions, leftist like leftist media to prop up leftist schools, media, right? And that's the cultural basis of the left and of the Democratic Party. And if that money's getting cut off, it's like, we're not going to pay you to promote DEI and radical gender theory and LGBTQ stuff. You're going to have to believe it yourself and pay for it yourself. It's sort of like when, anyway.
And, you know, it all makes sense now.
Right. And so we'll see if there'll be a little bit more equality in colleges in the academic front, right? Not all leftists.
Good luck with that.
We can get a little bit more. They say the next generation coming up, the young youth who have gone through this Biden administration, have been really turned off and are much more likely, much more conservative than the baby boomer hippie generation or even millennials. And so they're going to want to higher education. They're going to want to read newspapers and things that cater to that. So I'd hope that there won't be as much cultural domination on that, because if we can get out where the government's not funding it, first off, they're not going to get kickbacks.
Where I'm not funding it.
Yeah. They're going to have to believe in this themselves. Now, they might not like Elon Musk, but the left has their own billionaires.
Oh, yeah.
George Soros.
Speaking of, you know, one of the things that went that was in this Doge thing is that they found $27 million is going to George Soros's prosecutor line. Like, what in the world? Literally funding George Soros's. I mean, this stuff it drives me mad. Like, really, really, really frustrating for me, because this is my money, and it shouldn't be. They should learn how to be good stewards of my money, right? Like, if they're gonna steal it from me in the first place, they should at least treat it well. But obviously they're not. But you know, it all makes sense now why they fought so hard to keep all this from happening, and why they fought so hard to discredit Elon Musk. Literally, the left-wing media engine, their life depended on it. Like, literally, like, now it all makes sense, right? It makes sense why they're fighting so hard against it, because it's like, this is literally their money, their lifeline. So
go woke, go broke, not when the government's paying you off. And so now we'll see, you know, if they're not being deceitfully funded, if that will give a more level playing field for conservative news reporting, for conservative education, for conservative entertainment.
Yeah. I got a question for everybody out there who's listening, everybody in the audience. If you're upset, for example, with the Republicans, with the way that they're doing things, my question would be, how would you want them to do it better? Because like some of this stuff just needs to get cut off. Like I just don't understand the alternatives that are like, for example, the people that are saying that this is illegal. Like, can you point to the law that it's breaking? Because I can't find it. Can you point to the U.S. code that's violated here?
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's just a matter of like some people would like change to happen more gradually. Like if we're going to shut down the Department of Education, like I talked about maybe shutting it down over 4 years, like gradually turning down 25% less budget, and on the fourth year cutting it off. Right? If you cut it off right away, that's the type of people kind of like change to happen a little more slowly.
yeah.
And the USAID or all this stuff feels now. Right now, it's just information and a 90-day pause. Right.
Right.
And so I think maybe they're overreacting because not. But as far as the big change here is just it's getting exposure. The government's caring about this. They're not just turning a blind eye to waste.
Right.
And we have AI technology that can expose this and now get it out. And now the crux is on are the media going to build back their credibility by looking at this data that DOGE is going to give them and report it honestly. And say, no, right, and dig into it and say, okay, look into it, and not just try to defend and carry water and say, like, oh, we're blameless, you're just, you're not seeing it. But really see, no, this is corruption. This was money laundering. This was undermining and wasting taxpayers' dollars and was good to see the light of day so it could die.
And side note on this, the government funding media, I mean, that's a state-run media, right? Like, there's no mincing words about that, right? Like, we act like we're not.
That's happening.
Isn't that essentially a violation of the Constitution?
Not one that's publicly known, like NPR. Like they can. So
fair enough. But,
the government steps in when certain areas are underserved, right? Like say, so you got to think back to the radio days, right?
Right.
New York, Los Angeles, big cities wouldn't have tons of radio because there were so many people. It made sense, but then you'd go out to the country, right, where there are fewer people, like when they are being underserved, and so they would subsidize, say, like, we want radio to extend, even if it's brought, to these underserved communities. So, because maybe it's not as financially, there aren't as much financial incentives for somebody to do that, or not as much as we would like.
But that's not
so something like that. But that doesn't really exist today, even if it existed. Right, in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s.
But is that subsidizing the actual station, or is that just subsidizing the infrastructure?
They would do both, right? So to do content and stuff like that, it's basically like public television. When you've lived in a city that has, a large enough city and has everything, you don't realize there are some parts, right? The only channels they get are, could get where ABC, NBC, CBS and PBS, right? Type of thing like that, or sometimes just PBS or whatever, right? So, but because it's 2024, you don't need to do that. Like one of the big boondoggles that's going to come out, was so many billions of dollars put aside in this spirit to deliver high-speed internet to rural areas, underserved, right? Because for internet providers, if you can do a neighborhood, right, you lie a mile of cord, you can maybe get 50 customers. You go out to the country a mile, you might get one. You might not even get any until 10 miles before you get 2 or 3 customers, right? So they need certain financial incentives to provide services out there. So they set aside all this money and literally nothing's been done with it. It's just been graft. Right? Nobody's had any access signed up from this program, and that's the thing that they've taken. Right, what the government has historically tried to do is say, all right, infrastructure needs to go from the cities out to these other areas, and we want it to happen faster than it normally would, so we'll subsidize it. And then rather than doing that with the subsidies, they're just corruption. They're just siphoning it off.
That's
And
insane.
Yeah, and that if we can get back to that, that would be a big step forward, I think, too.
Yeah. I think Elon's going to do a great job. I know people don't like him, but I'm so happy that he's going through this thing like with a fine tooth comb. I'm so happy that he's brought his little underage wizards with him. I'm so happy that Trump is willing to just like, because this is the thing. This is one of the things that people don't realize, the difference between the business world and like the political world is this is how things in my mind have always been like this is how things have supposed to operate, right? To me, because I'm used to being a manager for convenience stores, for pawn shops. I'm a manager, right? I think like a manager, right? And when I come into a new place and that I need to like fix, right? It's almost always an opportunity, right? Because otherwise, why did they hire you, right? It's almost always somebody sucked, or it's very rarely is it someone got promoted, but it does happen. But most of the time, it's somebody got fired, somebody was stealing, somebody was like something like that. So you move into a new place, and it's like bing, bang, boom. Hire a bunch of guys, fire a bunch of guys, reorganize the store, get it go. Like it's not like let's do things slowly. Let's ask Congress. No. It's boom, 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 and get it done.
You're talking about one store versus institutions and populations, but I see the point, and I see that Trump saw when he tried to slow roll it, he gave too much power to his opposition to oppose him, and by going fast, he gets some momentum. Now there will be some pushback, and they'll have to then take the next step and make these changes institutional and really go from being interesting and fun to being a new way of doing government. So that's the next step, really deep rooted. Yeah. We did have a question I did want to respond to.
Oh yeah.
Original Black Magic said, "What about subsidies to corporate farmers?" Now again, I'm a due process guy. I don't stand 100% against subsidies to corporate farmers, but on an individual basis, if they have a business plan, why are we subsidizing them? Is there something that they're providing that the country needs and it's not being provided enough to? Or are we subsidizing them because they happen to know somebody, they're politically connected, they just want some extra money for whatever reason? Are we subsidizing them because they got hit by a disaster? Every case has got to be evaluated individually. So you can't just say any corporate farm interest is undeserving of subsidies, and obviously there are situations where those should be drawn down, or maybe they don't qualify. But there are lots of things where if they can justify it, where it would be in our interest and in the government's interest to subsidize them.
So that's what we got for you today, guys. Are there any other questions, any other comments, any other concerns? I think I'm excited, honestly. To be honestly, I don't agree with everything Trump's doing. Like, I just want to put that out there. I agree with about 90% of it, right? Like about 90% of it's good. 10% of it, I'm like, really? Why do we like when he came out with Gaza, I'm like, really? But But some of the things, here's the thing. The difference is, even though I have my reservations about Trump, and he acts very, very quickly, very rashly sometimes, I like to see what the results are first before judging, right? Like, I'm not going to say doing what he's doing in Gaza is bad until after it plays out. And then, in 5-10 years, if it's like turns into another Afghanistan where we're just hanging on to real estate for no reason, then I'll be like, all right, this was a bad idea. But in 5-10 years, if it's like a Riviera paradise, as he claims, great, fantastic. And especially if the Gazans are taking care of it, that's the real thing. But so
if they can live that without corruption, I think prosperity could explode.
Yes. Yep. And same for it within our country. If the Democrats can manage without corruption.
And Trump has largely, I think, followed common sense things that the far left was so out there walking around, without any clothes, saying, "Look how beautiful our clothes are." Him just look, the emperor has no clothes. We're going to deport illegal aliens. we're not going to fund radical transgender. We're going to keep girls out of men's sports, like common sense stuff. And the left just like put it on a platter and said, here, just do common sense stuff. And but it's good governance, and I'm here for it.
Yep, me too. All right, what do you guys think? Put some comments in the chat, and we'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining. Thank you so much for participating, everyone that did, especially Angelie. She did a great job.